photography is a single art, like painting, like writing, like music. Cinematography is a common art. I think is not an art form that can be expressed by one single person.
You put something in an audience's mind visually, and they will carry away images as well as the words.
They really thought of it as a job, and they thought of it as a craft.
Light to me is like a paint to an artist.
The emotions, the characters, we all have associations with color, memories, how we think about color. It's subjective.
The art of moving pictures has changed drastically, and not just over the course of centuries, but even over the course of the past 50 years.
It took a number of years for cinematographers to start thinking about ways to free the camera again.
Camera was very free. Camera could move very fast. Cameras were much smaller.
From revolving drums with pictures, to hand-cranked machines, to fully digital cameras capable of making extremely high-quality feature-length films. Not only have the technical aspects of movie making improved exponentially, but the philosophy and the art of cinematography have also evolved over time as well. From being used for scientific purposes, to spawning the field of study called film theory, to creating social and societal impacts and movements. The way films are made and our perception in viewing them have changed remarkably.
It was an inspiration to realize what was achieved in that cinematography. I mean, we're talking pretty close to the beginning of everything here, and to realize what he accomplished with the equipment that he had and how quickly so many things became much more sophisticated.
The fundamental change that arose in the early 1900s when people started to view films as works of art was an extremely important one. From Edison's film collection of people doing everyday things, to Malaya's A Trip to the Moon, to Griffith's The Birth of a Nation, there was a clear progression in what these films represent thematically.
Subject matter that helps interpret modern life. I mean, how the life is changing. The role of the woman has changed so much in terms of how she has gone out in the workforce and this and the politics, all these things. You wish that films could shed some light on this stuff, because that seems to be the role of art, certainly.
Yeah, because it reflects you, reflects your society.
And you even have an audience.
The very fabric of the world of cinema was changed drastically, funneling an immense amount of ideas, philosophies, and calls for change. Film started to become an avenue for artists to express their beliefs, opinions, and creativity. Film theory is the study of cinema's relationship to the individual, society, and the arts. Understanding the various philosophies used within and without film is an essential element in being able to decipher why the filmmakers made the creative and technical decisions they did. One of the earliest documented philosophies of the analysis of film as an art was a book entitled Photoplay, a Psychological Study, released in 1916 by Hugo Münsterberg. He states in the book that films are a mirror of the mind, and not necessarily of the world, and that the goal of cinema is not to reproduce reality, but to materialize emotions. This profound analysis on the philosophy of film, documented over 100 years ago, is still being utilized by filmmakers to this day. Framing, composition, angles, mood lighting, creative editing, set design, wardrobe, and scores.
Come on, Tars!
They all contribute to this Münsterbergian school of thought, and it's seen throughout history. Over on the Eastern European side of the world, the philosophy of cinema underwent dramatic changes. The Russian formalism train of thought began to make way for some incredible films. Borrowing from Münsterberg's idea that movies are a reflection of the individual's mind, that there should be a constant conflict between two subjects or objects in a film, that cinematic time does not move chronologically or parallel to real time. Russian formalists saw montage as the reconstruction of the laws of the thought process, in which two conflicting subjects or objects crash into each other and produce yet another crude and unique idea or subject. The viewer is coerced into seeing the synthesis of these two unlikely things, relying on rational constructive composition of effective elements rather than intuitive creativity. A train of thought that would creep its way into the industry and dominate the filmmaking and editing process to this very day.
They had a sparseness, a visual and stylistic sparseness. You know, what's the bare bones story, what are the bare bones facts of the characters, and what is the basic visual information we need to tell the story. And so
soon, two very important cinematic philosophies would emerge yet again from Europe. This time from Italy, with the Rationalism and soon-to-be Realism or Neorealism movements.
I think the films of the French New Wave really influenced me the most. They captured a sense of the life, which was really wonderful, by loosening up the camera and moving with it. I mean, they would not think anything about picking up the camera and running with it. You know, it had almost a documentary feel, and so that sort of quality about it would draw you into the film in a way that I think you know, a more static camera would not.
Rationalism, coined famously by Italian philosopher Galvano della Volpe in 1954, is explained by della Volpe that art has almost no distinction from science. That art voluntarily remains indifferent towards social issues and commentaries and excels in the technical and structural form of art, all the while still being able to represent the world symbolically and analyze abstract concepts. This train of thought also saw psychological interpretation and social commentary on society and the human condition as a whole rendered null due to film contextually being the subconscious emanations of the film director, and therefore as a different reality than what is actually objectively true. From here, there were two main offshoots, inspired by rationalism and the concepts it brought to the table. Semiology in film, which is the study of signs and symbols, and the realism of the Italian neorealism movement. The Italian realism and neorealism movement began during World War II and continued for years thereafter. It was an attempt to realistically depict life by limiting the controlling creative factors of artistic structure and form in the process of production. Doing away with the Russian formalist idea of montage, the aim for realism was to translate real time to cinematic time as it was in its chronological state. One philosopher at the forefront of Italian neorealism, named Andrea Bazin, says that he saw the rejection of style as a stylistic option. The realism movement sought out to create the most in-your-face and non-sugar-coated film, which were inspired by the bleak and disturbing world that the wars and revolutions had brought upon the culture and society at the time. Existentialism in film was also a product of this dark time in history, and would be derivative of many of the philosophies that existed before. Alexandre Astrou, a disciple of neorealist Andrea Bazin, articulated existential cinema in his essay La Camera Stylo. In it, he relates the camera to a pen, in which it writes out the story for the viewers. It is abstraction in the most direct of forms in cinema, using the camera as the main orator of the story.
I don't think that movies should be made because of the dialogue. I think it should have a good story, but I think the important thing has to be how it is told visually. And you know, dialogue should be like music in a film.
Asterix's view of cinema saw the writing camera as the main orchestrator of a film's style, and not necessarily of the director or authors. One of the more abstract and complex philosophies, this has been adapted by many filmmakers throughout since its original conception. These philosophies, including Rationalism and Neorealism, would soon be known as part of the French New Wave of cinema. There are also many contemporary articulations on philosophy of cinema and what exactly dictates a film's value as an artful medium.
That kind of relation that I divided at the beginning, I was expressing myself only through light and shadows, but I have to separate them in order to understand the two of them. After, particularly after Apocalypse Now, I opened the light and I discovered what was inside, color. And after I said, this is the warm color, this is the cold color, the chance to dividing element was done by me unconsciously because I want to know better the difference between day and night, man and female, conscious and unconscious.
When you make a movie, you got to have a screenplay, a story. Well, that story really dictates to what we're going to do, how to shoot it, how to photograph it, how to direct it, how to act it. Everyone is subservient to that. We can go one way or the other to get our own ideas in it, but not get our personality.
As soon as you take a camera out of its box and put a lens on it and everybody's in makeup and wardrobe, it's an inherently fake thing. And you're just looking for clues and ways to sort of dispel what audiences have become used to in terms of the presentation of ideas. So you're trying to sort of find new clues as to, or ways to sort of blur the lines between what is something that's so presentational and so silly in itself, and give it a little verisimilitude so that people can kind of connect it to them.
Film can only enhance that, but it can't make it. It can't create it. Human beings come to the table with their own aesthetic approach.
The impact cinema has had on society is undoubtedly one of the most important in human history, and will most likely continue to be a medium that gives artists an opportunity to explore and convey various topics, stories, and ideas, to ultimately make an impact in the hearts and minds of society and the individual, and to inspire generations to come.
So using those kind of elements that are appropriate to yourself, to your attitudes, your personality, you discover who you are. And that's the most important thing. So that's I learned when I understand that I was ignorant. I knew technology, very important, but I never knew about art. So unless I put these two together, technology and art, and I become much more mature, more in equilibrium with my chance to express myself.